Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for day 3 of the review of the grab bag that I got from Partners and Son in Philadelphia. Remember, this is like an ongoing kind of game that I'm playing with them of seeing if they can get to know my taste. So, day 3 are the books that I like. You can go back if you haven't and watch the video number 2 was the books that I was like, yeah, so on. And the first one was the ones that I really wasn't into. Remember, these are just my personal tastes. I'm trying to be fair with the books about what I think the artist was up to and then explaining like, what it is that I'm looking for in a book, which oftentimes what's different than what the artist is trying to do. I'm giving them a rank from 1 to 10, which is something I normally stay away from in reviews on purpose. I don't think that's particularly descriptive of something since I'm looking at a whole range of things, like the writing could be a 10 and the art could be a 3 or something like that. But for the sake of communicating with the store for further grab bags, what my preferences are, I think it would be helpful for them to really know like when they've nailed it or not. Nothing in this grab bag was a 9 or a 10, and I'll do a little bit of spiel at the end of this about what for me drives something um, over into a 9 and a 10. But these are all books that they sent me that I enjoyed that I'm happy to have on my shelf. So enjoy these, support all the creators. Definitely reach out to Partners and Son. They have all kinds of good products. The Santos Sisters by Greg and Fake. Finally, a comic for Generation X. Threw me for a loop a little bit with the John 3:16 INRI thing up here. But I could pretty much tell what this is. It's a very, very loving tribute slash parody, bringing the comics of our kids up to adult level tastes kind of thing. And it's really well done. Like, it really looks and feels like a comic from when I was a kid. It's printed on newsprint. They're kind of constantly shifting the colors away from the lines, so it looks like it's slightly misprinted. Uh, Got the very like Archie look to the art, or the TMNT Archie comics look, like what me and Sean were looking at recently with the Ken Mitchroney art. I wonder if these guys were looking at him as well as the Archie characters. But it's funny. It's definitely meant for adults. I don't think it's the kind of thing I would normally buy on my own, just because it's these really short, 3 or 8 page stories or something like that. But there were a number of times I laughed out loud while I was reading this. Um, like, he's asking these prostitutes, uh, Don Quixote is asking prostitutes for Sancho Panza, and she asks, "Is that similar to a Mexican pancake or more like a Cleveland steamer?" And then later he finds Pancho Sanza eating some pancakes and says, "Oh, she also mentioned something about a Cleveland steamer. Perhaps I'll try that." So it's just, yeah, it's meant for adults, but it's subversive in that way. It looks like an old Archie comic, but obviously meant for adults. Or like this page here, the villain says, "Prepare to eat your own assholes, Santos Sisters," and she says, "I would if I could." And then her and her sister have a conversation about, "Oh, really? Like, I never thought you were into that. Oh, yeah, like, and then they're talking about how would that even work. And while he's going through these contortions to dodge their laser beams, it's kind of matching up with the text about how one would eat one's own asshole. So I don't know. It's like just dumb, stupid fun. I don't think it's like pushing any the medium forward in any way, but I did really enjoy it. Like I said, I probably wouldn't have chosen to grab this, but as a read, I enjoyed it, and I would probably buy another one at this point. It was fun. It was kind of like a good mix of nostalgia. Um, I was listening to someone talk about Bruno Mars's album with Anderson .Paak, Silk Sonic, and they were talking about how much it feels like the '70s vibe, but then they'll throw in something like "this bitch," which is very contemporary. This feels like that. It feels like '80s comics, then with a giant dick monster in it. So it's an interesting, like, contemporary or adult spin on it that's compelling. The Santos Sisters by Greg and Fake, that would be a 6 or a 7. It was enjoyable. It made me laugh a lot. I don't know that it's something that could continue on. Like, I don't know that I'd want a bunch of that. I don't know that I want them to keep going with that forever. 8 or 9 in terms of production, like really, really nailing the look of those old Archie comics. But in terms of like the stuff that I want to be looking at, it gave me some giggles, but a 6 or a 7. The Boy, the Trouble, the Canyon, a solo Jimmy adventure, a Dirty Growlers Presents story written and drawn by Emmanuel Guerrero. It's a risograph book, which is something we've been talking about a lot lately. I've been seeing a lot of and really enjoying. This one's called the Lemonade Edition, so I wonder if there are different versions of this where this lemonade yellow has been swapped out with a different color, like the pink and the red are there, but the yellow changes out. That would be interesting. I looked at Emmanuel's Instagram, and he has a number of books, but I didn't dig deep enough to see if there was versions of this. But I kind of like that idea. That could be the same story, same art, but because of the risograph, the ability to swap out the ink cartridges, that you could have different editions of the book. That's a good idea from the collecting selling standpoint. I'm happy I got the Lemonade edition if there are variations, because I really, really like this color scheme. The book is, to me, this is like Adventure Time generation, kids that grew up on Adventure Time. He's obviously a younger artist, but very accomplished in the style. Very much seems to fit the style that a lot of people doing risograph do as well, with that thin cartoon outline and then the couple colors. This seems kind of like part of a larger story with that Adventure Time connection, and this, I get the sense that this artist probably likes the Trondheim Dungeon books as well, or at least has picked up that influence just through Adventure Time. But it has that feeling of like me dropping into a much larger world. There's a bigger quest going on here, and I don't know all the details, but it's a self-contained story that works on its own. I mean, not the type of story that I'm personally super into, but I love the art on this. And I think this is good. Like, when you're starting a story like this, you have to do just these shorter impact. You can't give me the whole world all at once. So I think this is something that if I picked up more and more and more of these, I could really get sucked into the world. So I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just, if this is just a one-off thing like this, then it feels a little hollow. But it being a Dirty Growlers Presents and a solo Jimmy adventure suggests to me that it's part of a larger world. So I'm excited to see more of that for sure. It did make me laugh out loud in this one panel here where there's these little fairy creatures, and it says, "You guys are bugs. What secrets do you have?" And it says, "I have 3 kids out of wedlock. My wife doesn't know. I don't file taxes." And then this character says, "I slept with his wife." And that got me. That made me laugh. I like these cool textural things going on in the background that feel like they were done through some other process and scanned and collaged in. So there's really a lot to like about this book. And then there's a character here, the main character, that says, "I promised my grandpa that I'd make it to the buried city, and I'm not going to let anything stand in my way." And even so it's finished, it says, "Come on, let's go to the buried city." So like I said, this is part of a larger story, and I think my enjoyment of it would increase as I was exposed to more of that story. As it is, it's just kind of a silly, quirky little tale about a couple kids in a canyon evading some bad guys. There's some dialogue stuff, like with weird use of the word mate over and over again, and some like accent things that the artist is trying to do just by, or like a lisps or something that seemed a little goofy to me. But again, that also seems to come out of like the quirky cartoon aesthetic. So I think this artist is doing exactly what they intend to do. I think they're being very successful, and I'll definitely be as I get money, trying to check out more of Emmanuel Guerrero's work. The Boy, the Trouble in the Canyon by Emmanuel Guerrero. I'd give that one's hard. I'd give the art like an 8 or a 9. I really like the art. The story is like a 6 or a 7, and maybe in a longer context I might like it more. So someone I'm curious about, but it didn't like really punch me in the gut. But I really like the way it looked. Cowboys and Insects by David Hein and Shaky Kane. I remember reading this team's book, The Beef, and loving it. It's so strange and surreal. I love Shaky Kane's art. The like Jeff Darrow without it like packing up so many details, but that kind of Jeff Darrow line weight. This book seems to be like a counterpart to The Beef in a sense. Like there is no more beef anymore, and they herd ants and they eat ants. And this one girl in class is a vegan, and that's considered to be like super perverse in this society. Love the coloring. It's printed on a paper that soaks up. Like these are super intense colors, but they're being soaked up by the paper and desaturated a little bit, which is really one of my favorite ways to see comics, like really clean lines with colors, but just slightly desaturated by the paper. So this little boy makes friends with the girl who's a vegan, and he finds out she's hiding an ant creature, and there's some consequences to that. But this team is so good at just unsettling me. These like gross, surreal things. And as gross as this is, like where this ant's like slobbering all over this plant that they give it, like the little girl kisses the little boy, and he says, "To this day, if I close my eyes, I can still taste Cindy's banana lip gloss." And that like got me way more. That's so much nastier even than the ant. But you see this, and he has this emotional reaction to like where he really hates her. You know, he really thinks she's a pervert for being a vegan. And then he tastes her banana lip gloss, and that was just like the stamp on it that just made me go, ugh. So I love these guys' work. I've seen some of it before, and I'm super happy to have this. I didn't know that this book came out, and I'll have to see what else they've done. There's some other stuff advertised in here. I've seen this stuff on the internet, images of it and stuff. The Bulletproof Coffin. The only one I read was The Beef. So I was really excited about this one. Really happy for this. Cowboys and Insects by David Hein and Shaky Kane. That would be an 8. I like that team. I like what they do. That one in particular had some real like visceral moments in it. So I think that's really special in a comic when you can get that. But you know, it's not like a 9 or a 10 like the greatest of the greats type of thing. Birth of the Bat by Josh Simmons. I have no idea how in the hell he was able to make this book, and how the Mansion Press, who published by Andy Barron, which we talked about recently, so they obviously have really good, interesting tastes in artists and projects. I have no idea how they got away with this, because this is straight up a Batman comic. The character looks like Batman. The only thing that you could argue is like this isn't actually Batman is they've got a name change, and he's obviously not wearing a costume. He's got like the underwear and the boots, but the rest of him is naked. But I don't know. I guess under parody laws you can get away with this. I was really surprised. It's really dark. It's pretty funny. The art's really good. I know I've seen some other stuff by Josh Simmons. I think he's Simmons maybe is the name. I think he's pretty diverse in his stylistic approach, if I remember, which I really like. Maybe I don't want to give away the end. It's hard to flip through this book too, because there's a lot of just like raging bat boners. So I'll just say this one is really well made, really well drawn, well produced, completely unsettling, but in a pertinent way. It's like I think this is a response to what comics were in the 80s, where it was like, the Watchmen thing. If superheroes were real people, this is how they'd actually be messed up. No, this shows like if superheroes were real people, how they would actually, like what kind of lunatics they would actually be. So I like that. I like this quite a bit. I just don't know how in the hell they got away with it. Birth of the Bat by Josh Simmons. I would give that 7. That was probably my second favorite book in the batch. 8 for production and art and all of that, but the story's just kind of weird. I mean, like 10 for the fact that you did it, and you got away with it, and the ending of it's totally wild. Um, but again, I'm looking at these like stuff like if I walked into a shop, like would I grab it? And that would probably put it at a 7 for me. The Inspector by Liam Cobb. This one's awesome. This is a really good one. It's published by Breakdown Press, so that's no surprise. I've really liked a lot of the stuff I've got from them. It's another risograph, it looks like. It's got those same type of wild colors, except this one really has a wide variety of colors. It's not that typical, like very obvious 3-color. So it might be something like a 4-color print going on to make a lot of the colors, but there are still these areas where they have the really intense fluorescent colors that I'm used to seeing from the risograph. So maybe it's something else. Maybe there's just a lot more passes through the machine going on this book. But it's a fun, quirky little book about a Michelin man, little icon here, but he's the Michelin inspector for the restaurants. And in the opening sequence, they explain how the Michelin star system came about. I never knew that. I thought it was just like a coincidence of the names. I didn't realize it was actually tied to the tire company. They explained the rating system, and I looked it up, and all that information's accurate. But yeah, these fluorescent colors coming from the risograph seems more standard for the risograph, but then you get those pages that have a lot more color on them. So I'm pretty curious about the process on this one, and there's some really interesting textures as well that wouldn't show up on camera. But really great art. It's again that clean line art, that kind of typical style I see on the risograph, which is the clean line with the real focus on color, colored lines, no blacks in there. Really, really great perspective drawings. Some wild, trippy scenes taking advantage of the crazy colors, like this fluorescent pinks and stuff. And it's just this guy going around, and the author's coming up with all of these crazy different dishes that people are feeding the Michelin inspector to please him and get 3 stars. So it becomes like more and more absurd as it goes. Really driven by the art, but the story is pretty fun and funny as well. So Liam Cobb definitely has my attention. I looked on Instagram, and it looks like he's doing a bunch of illustration now. I saw a post lamenting wanting to get back to comics, so I hope Liam Cobb does get back to comics, because this kind of stuff is really exciting to me. The Inspector by Liam Cobb, I'd give that an 8. That was probably my favorite book out of this batch. The art was really good, the story was cohesive, and like seemed to congeal together into a real statement. It also gave me the impression of an artist that's going to keep going and doing interesting things. So that's something that I'm really interested in, is like not just potential, but like really feels like they're going somewhere. So yeah, that book was probably my favorite one in this batch. So the best rating I gave out was for The Inspector, which was an 8. So people might be wondering, wow, what does it take to get a 9 or a 10? And I'm trying to communicate my preferences to a shop so they can really show me stuff. And I'm totally cool with them continuing to try new things too. I'm not expecting people to land a 9 or a 10 every time. Like that's very rare. But I did order some books, and obviously because I chose them, they're obviously going to be more geared towards my taste, so the chances of that are higher. So I would point out a couple books that I had ordered from them previously that I would put in the 9 and 10 category, and I'll explain why. I really, the reason I went to Partners and Son in the first place was to pick up Generous Bosom by Connor Steck-Schulte at the recommendation of Matt Battaglia. Issue 1 of this is a 10. Take out the last page, and issue 1 of this is a 10. It's just so beautifully produced, so beautifully drawn. Like, I love the art style. There's like some really amazing formalist tricks with color. The story here's some of the beautiful kind of printing and color tricks. The story is like so richly dramatic and mature. Where the series goes from here, you've seen in my other video. I didn't like it quite as much, but this particular issue on its own, I think, is This is a 10. This is one of the best books I've read. Take out the last page. Someone I had never heard of until I looked at Partners Son website was Andrew White, M and N. And my name is Martin Shears. My name is Martin Shears was all right, but M and N, again, just absolutely gorgeous art. A lot of cool formal tricks, really compelling, even though it seems autobiographical, which is typically kind of a turnoff for me. It's so well done, and it's so much about like this. And normally I'm not into the vague stories, but this one is vague in a way that suggests the vagueness of memory. So even things that I'm not into, normally, if someone does it exceptionally, and if it's conceptually of a whole with how the whole thing's produced, the art, the writing, all of that goes to really land an intention, that's going to put this at the top of my list at a 10 too. And Andrew White is someone that I plan on. I'll probably take a month off from this game and just drop a bunch of money on getting the rest of Andrew White's stuff. I think his stuff is fantastic. And Andrew, if you see this, I'm hunting an interview with you, man. I really want to talk. There's a lot of cool production stuff in there too I'd love to see. And then Foldable by Hugh Nguyen. I've already ordered 2 more of Hugh's books, and we're talking about doing an interview. Hugh, I believe, is still in school. I complained about not liking poetry with the Tom Herpich book. This book is visual poetry to me. And and some poetry comics that are like this I like, and some I don't. But there's something about how good Hugh is at just straight up design and the interweaving of text and picture in a way that communicated to me mood. I think Hugh is still evolving, but there's even stuff like having the metal on the cover. It's just a really, like a metallic, it's a really solid, thought through, complete package. I think I would put Hugh at a 9 because it's going somewhere. It doesn't feel fully resolved yet, but very excited about that, and hoping to get an interview with Hugh as well. So maybe that gives a better explanation to Partners in Son about what really pushes a book over the top for me, and also to people who have been following along, like when they're looking at like, what is this guy looking for? You know, he got like $100 worth of comics and he didn't get anything in there that was a 9 or a 10. You got to reserve that for something really, really special, right? Like if you're going to give something a 10, that means it's on your all-time greats list type of thing. And you really got to reserve that. So those are the types of things that really push things over. Those are the types of things I always want recommends for, you know, like what's that new thing that's going to make me rethink comics? What's that new thing that's just such a potent, complete statement that you can't deny it? So hopefully you all have enjoyed. Hopefully this is kind of a fun game for you guys to watch along with. I know this is just volume 1 of the game. I'm also maybe going to try this with Menachem at Escape Pod and maybe flip back between the 2 stores and get 2 different stores' tastes, and hopefully have this ongoing series. And to Partners in Son and Menachem, if you do this, like sometimes if you have someone that you really believe in, but it's like, I kind of think he's not going to like it because it's not in his taste, but you really think it's someone that people need to be exposed to, I still want to see it. I want our viewers to see it. I want that artist to get exposure. So I'm cool to pay a little bit of money for that. Even it's like, it's not my thing. You know, like I think the Tom Herpich book is like that. Totally not my thing. Like don't really want it. But I really think it probably is somebody's thing. So I want to make that clear again at the end of all of this. The numerical ratings and the way I'm categorizing them is based on my taste. But when I do the review, I'm trying to just be honest enough that people could see if it's something they value or not. So thanks for following along. I hope you guys like this idea. Let me know what you think. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.